Hello and welcome to No Wrong Choices, the podcast that explores the career journeys of accomplished people. We showcase these stories to provide insights that are strategic, inspiring, and most of all entertaining. I'm Larry Samuel, soon to be joined by the other fellas, Tushar Saxena and Larry Shea. If you've been enjoying our show or are new to the program, please support No Wrong Choices by following us wherever you're listening right now and by giving us a 5-star rating. We also encourage you to connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and X, or to send us a note via NoWrongChoices.com. This episode features the Emmy Award-winning TV news anchor and reporter Cindy Hsu, who can be seen on WCBS TV in New York. Tushar is a distant colleague of Cindy's who also works in the CBS newsroom. You are the perfect person to set up this conversation for us.
Well, Cindy Hsu and I actually are colleagues, so I'll give you that as our full disclosure on this. I mean, she and I are not on the same level. She's like 50 levels above me in terms of her ability to tell the news. She's a great storyteller. She's what we call in the business a consummate pro, right? But, this is not a job for everyone. And I say that all the time to everybody. It's like, this is not a job for everyone, whether it be an anchor, whether it even be working behind the scenes. There's a lot of stress involved, a lot of pressure involved. And there's a reason why this job, why this career being in broadcast media has a lot of turnover. Because there's a lot of stress and pressure involved. And sometimes it's not easy to handle. Not everyone can. And she's one of the few who's been able to kind of deal with that over the course of her career.
Yeah, and I know Cindy's a big advocate for mental health, so I'm sure we're going to touch on that quite a bit. And you're right, T, they're not handing out these jobs to just anybody, right? This is a real prove it or lose it kind of position here, and she obviously, with all of her success, Emmy-winning success, I mean, she obviously paid her dues and then some, and is a consummate professional, as you said. It takes a real passionate person to find these stories and then find a way to share these stories. But you're right, it is high stress. It is high anxiety. I don't know if I could step up there and not feel the stage fright, the anxiety of giving a performance, basically, right? So high stress, and they're not just handing these things out. So I'm so excited to hear her journey and how she got there.
And to that point, as I was preparing to do the interview today, I was watching all these clips and all these stories that Cindy has done throughout, I guess really not her career. A lot of the stuff was very recent, but her energy, her smile, her presence comes through and just kind of makes you feel good. So I look forward to Cindy making us feel good in one way or another over the course of the next hour or so. So here is Cindy Hsu. Cindy, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. How are you?
Very well, thank you. It's nice to, I guess this is a formal way for us to talk, as you and I occasionally bump into each other in the neighborhood, as we have recently discovered that we are neighbors. So it's nice to.
She lives across the
street. She does. Our buildings literally look at each other.
Nice.
Yeah, we had a nice dog walk. It was really fun.
Absolutely.
Very good. Cindy, let's start at the beginning here. Like, tell people a little bit about yourself. Who is Cindy Hsu? What does she do for a living? And a little bit about your day-to-day.
Okay, let's see. I am a news anchor and reporter for WCBS TV in New York City. And I've been here for 30 years, which is miraculous. That's a very long time, because normally we all get fired every few years, as we all know. I've been here, and I focus on uplifting stories. That's really my passion. And right now, my latest thing is I anchor a 9 a.m. show. It's an hour long, and we focus on, everyone says I don't watch the news because it's depressing, and we try to stay away from those types of stories.
So, Cindy, let's go back to the beginning a little bit. So, the Cindy Hsu story starts where? And is this always what a little Cindy Hsu wanted to do? Not to sound like a Dr. Seuss book, but nonetheless, what did little Cindy Hsu want to do?
Little Cindy Hsu wanted to be a fashion designer, a lawyer, and a doctor. Those were just things that, were little Cindy Hsu. But then I looked at all my skills, and none of them matched. I didn't have any of these skills. And so
you're a real snappy dresser. I don't know what you're talking about.
Thank you. No, I actually, and when we're talking retail, I went for the summers and I worked retail, and I was like, this is not fun.
Right.
But Then let's see, when I went to college, I decided I wanted to follow in my father's footsteps. He was a Coast Guard pilot. So I decided I wanted to be an Army pilot, and I went to Virginia Tech in the Army ROTC program. So that's what I wanted to do. And then my second year in, I found out you had to have 20/20 vision. I did not have 20/20 vision, so I had to pivot right there.
Wow. Yeah. Going back to your dad a little bit, that's really cool. What was the story of your parents, and where was he a pilot? I know you mentioned the Coast Guard, but what was his story?
Both my parents were born in China, and they came over as children. My father went to Charlottesville, Virginia, because his father was a pathologist and became a professor there. And then he brought his family from China years later. And my dad was one of the first Asian Americans in the Coast Guard Academy. And he graduated and became a pilot. And I don't know, I think anybody, but especially Asians in general, really want to please our parents. And so I thought, what better way to make him proud than to do what he does? So that's what I had no idea what it meant to fly. I had no idea if I would be good at it, but I basically did it because I thought it seems like a good job, and my dad would be really proud of me.
So was this something that was in your mind from being a little girl? I heard you grew up in Hawaii. Is that true? Did you grow up in Hawaii? And what was your childhood like?
So the Coast Guard is just like any other military branch in the sense you move around a lot.
Right, sure.
So I was born in Hawaii, but I was only there for a year and a half. Then we kept moving every 2 to 4 years. But I say Hawaii is a little bit more home because when I went to college, they went back to Hawaii. He happened to be stationed back in Hawaii. So I was there for summer school and a lot more time. But yeah, it was just moving around a lot. And, it was a little challenging because most of the time we would move to places where there were not other Asians. So it was a lot of getting made fun of and being embarrassed about being Chinese, honestly. But as you get older, you get more comfortable in your skin. And honestly, it wasn't until New York City did I really feel good about who I really am.
I have to think that growing up and moving from place to place and trying to make friends like that and being Asian, I mean, it must have been difficult for you, I would imagine. How did that shape you? I mean, that must have given you, as you said, the courage to later on conquer some really serious professional hurdles, personal hurdles, what have you?
I'm trying to think. I don't know. I spent a lot of time. I have a little brother. He's 2 years younger. I spent a lot of time defending him because he was very nerdy looking. Now he's like a special forces guy. So he's the man now. But at the
there
time,
you go.
He, so, I mean, physically getting into fights for people who would pick on him. And I think it shaped me in that trying to fit in. I went so far as to tell people I was Hawaiian. I didn't say I'm Chinese because I was from Hawaii. And this is really weird, but I actually told people I was Catholic because it's almost like everyone I knew was Catholic. And I thought, oh, well, that'll get me in with them that we're the same. So it was a lot of trying to fit in. But I think any sort of hardship helps you when you get older.
Honestly, Cindy, your story is not that dissimilar from mine growing up a bit. I mean, I didn't move around as much as you did as an Army brat, but the notion of growing up, a child of immigrants, the journey is kind of the same, right? Where you're always trying to fit in. You don't really totally fit in, so you do what you have to do to fit in as well as you can, right? So, I mean, I totally get that. I always bring up the idea that, minorities and, kids of immigrants, their parents want them to go into the big four careers, which I always say, which is law, business, medicine, and like engineering. So those are the big four careers. What was it like for you to say, oh, I want to become, how did your parents say when you say I want to become a pilot? And then you said you had to pivot at VaTech. So my question then after that would be, what was the pivot in VaTech?
The pivot was, oh my goodness, what the heck? Let me look at what skills I have. And the only skill I really felt I naturally had was being very curious about everything. I mean, my friends used to say, can you stop interrogating that person you just met? Because it's very uncomfortable for them. But I wanted to know everything right away. So to me, that is a key, thing for a reporter. So that's really how I decided to become a reporter.
Did moving around a lot sort of shape how you deal with people, meaning it made it easier for you to make connections because you were making connections all the time?
Definitely. I mean, because in my business, you move around as well a lot. I moved, let's see, my first job was a year and a half. Then I was at a place in 2 years, then another year and a half, and then I moved again. So that didn't bother me at all. Where, somebody who may have lived in the same one or two places their whole life, it might have been difficult. But for me, I was like, I'm used to it.
Interesting. So the time at Virginia Tech, you pivot away from the pilot pursuit, and your friends have told you to stop asking so many questions, or at least direct them towards the right audience. So is that where you started to pursue journalism?
Yes, that's exactly where I started. So I started doing internships, and I really enjoyed them. I had really great mentors, people who would take me under their wing. And that's what I always tell young people now. You have to find that person who's really going to be your cheerleader, because I still have the same cheerleaders from decades ago. So, yeah, I just started interning, really liked it, and was lucky enough to get into the business.
I'm a big fan of the idea that mentors need mentors, and it's always good to find that person, like your first time out, when that first internship, who you can kind of look up to. So, your best internship. Let me ask a couple of different questions here. One, what was your first internship? Where was it? And then two, what was the last internship you had before your first professional gig?
Okay, let's see. I'm trying to remember the internship when I was in college. Okay, I interned while I was in college in Wheeling, West Virginia. No. Sorry, I'm messing up. I'm in Blacksburg, Virginia. Roanoke,
okay.
Roanoke, Virginia. So it's a little teeny station in Roanoke, Virginia, and I interned there while I was in college, and it was great. And then as far as when I got out of college, the hardest thing to do when you get out of school is to find your first job, because everyone's like, oh, 1 or 2 years experience. Well, how are you going to get that? So then I took an internship that was for the Virginia Alcoholic Beverage Control Board, which is they're the ones who say, stop, don't drink and drive, and, all that sort of stuff. So it was an 18-month internship. It was $20,000, which was actually a lot of money back then, because those were in the days where you didn't even get paid for internships.
Yeah, so a lot more than I got. My big zero
exactly.
was way less.
I was going to say, my first and last internships paid me a grand total of zero.
Right.
I think I owed money.
I know. That's why it's so funny these days that the interns are paid. But anyway, so I did that for a year and a half, and out of there, I was able to get a job in the business. And that's because I told everyone at this internship what I really wanted to do. And I think it was safer to do that because this was a limited time internship. It wasn't like, they wanted to hire me necessarily. So I let them know my dreams. And my boss happened to know a news director from the gym. So he introduced me to this news director. And then I interned on the weekends at the TV station while I worked during the week at the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board. And that's how, I really got my tape together and found some more mentors and got started.
Where was it that you found like that real love for journalism? Was it your first internship, the last internship you had, or was it just in school itself?
I don't know. And honestly, I don't know if there was ever like, oh man, I really want to be a journalist. I just think I was floating along.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't, even now, honestly, I'm not like a big news junkie. I'm not that person. I just like to tell stories. So I think it's, I feel like I really wanted to do it when I would get to tell the story of a young person who's doing amazing things or somebody that I'm really inspired by.
So, okay. So it's interesting. Was it always going to be an on-camera thing? Was that part of the dream? Obviously, you want to tell stories, and you just gave great insight into that part of it. But, being on camera and telling a story is a very different thing, bringing in an audience and that thing. Was that always part of the dream? And was there nerves involved with that? Were you like, there's a lot of trepidation sometimes when you're speaking in public. What was that like? Or was that like, no, this is the thing and I'm going to go for it?
I think it was, this is the thing and I'm going to go for it. I never really considered anything else but being a reporter. There's so many jobs, as we know, behind the scenes. But I was drawn to being a reporter on air.
That's great.
Do you remember what the first story was that you did on camera?
I don't, but I do remember in New York what my first story was, because that was 30 years ago. But I remember it was a hostage situation.
Oh my goodness.
And I was really freaked out.
Yeah.
I could see. Really, that was your first story? That it feels like you'd start with puppies or something,
Yes,
not
right,
that.
Right.
No. When you're in New York, you better know your stuff.
Wow. So what cities did you hit along the way once you broke in?
Let's see. So Richmond, Virginia was where I interned on the weekends. My first paid job was in Steubenville, Ohio. Then I went to Green Bay, Wisconsin, and then I came to New York.
Was it a help or a hindrance to be Asian?
I think it was probably a help in New York because I think they cared about diversity.
Right.
I don't necessarily know if it was a help in the other stations, but the difficulty about that is who's ever going to tell you? No one's ever going to tell you that. So you have to guess, do I think it's because of this or do I think it's because of this? So you really never know.
Did you find it harder having to prove yourself as a woman? Forget being a minority, but being a woman.
I honestly, I don't know. I didn't feel that way. As I'm here longer and as I hear stories from other people, I think I feel it more just from other people's stories as well. But I never felt, as a woman myself, that I'm not getting this or that. I think for me, it was really, honestly, the Asian thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Cindy, what was the scene like when you got here? You got here in 1993, is that right?
Yes.
So you're a young woman coming to New York City, the largest market on earth.
Number one market.
What was the thrill for you? How did you get that break? First of all, how did you get that break? How did you get this job?
I got this job because, you were talking about how many things you have to send out resumes. Back then it was tapes. You actually sent a tape to a news director. And I was rejected from so many places that I would take the rejection letters and I would hang them on my wall to say, you know what, I'm trying. So one of the news directors from one of the stations I sent a tape to said, you're not ready for here, which I think it was Seattle or something, but you should get an agent. So he actually suggested an agent and I got an agent. And that's when, the tapes really got on the right desks, because in the larger markets, they go through agents. They don't just look at everybody's tape. So that's how it was. Is actually, I feel like this is terrible to say, but this was the one time I really felt wanted, because I got a job in, Seattle offered me a job. Philadelphia offered me a job, and I had accepted from Philadelphia. And then out of the blue, New York interviewed me and they offered me a job on the spot, and I pulled out of Philadelphia.
Wow.
So that it was magic, and that magic has never happened again.
Never needed to happen.
It didn't have to.
Yeah.
So what's the dynamic like? You're a young woman coming into the big station. Were you accepted right away? Was there a hazing period? Like, what's it like as a young person coming in?
Well, it was great, because first of all, I think I was the youngest person coming into the newsroom as a reporter. I was 27 years old, and I'm coming into a newsroom where you've got Jim Jensen, Chris Borgen, Vic Miles.
Jim Jensen. Yeah. I haven't heard that name in forever. What an absolute legend that guy is. God,
all these folks were legends, and what was so wonderful is that they took me under their wing. And I think part of it is because I am not intimidating in any way. So they probably saw this young kid who was really wide-eyed and ready to learn and do whatever I need to do. And they really, took me under their wing, and I learned so much from them. And it's so different now. I feel kind of badly. I feel nowadays it's much more cutthroat, people looking over their backs all the time. Oh my goodness, who's this person? That sort of thing. But back then it wasn't like that. I love these guys, and I, I have such fond memories of working with them.
That's a great point about how competitive it is now. Did it come easy to you? Was this always something that came easy, or did you have to, practice in front of the camera and get your chops together?
Oh, no. I mean, I don't think it came easy to me. I definitely had to, watch other people, and just, another thing is just to become a really good writer. And that takes time. So, no, it didn't come naturally. I just watched a lot and learned a lot and got a lot of advice from managers as well.
That's where I was going to go next. Going into that environment with so many talented people, were there certain folks that really brought you, under their wing and brought you along?
Wow. They all did. I mean, Chris Borgen did. Jim Jensen did. I mean, he always taught me to really research, and something that has nothing to do with the business. He taught me to be very generous. I remember I was doing some sort of charity, and he was the first person who donated $100. I was like, wow. And so, yeah, I really all of them.
So you mentioned the first story in New York, the hostage situation. I'd love to hear about that one as well. But what are some of the other big stories that you worked on? Things where you just had to say, you know what, I got to pinch myself because I can't believe I'm doing this, or something you're super proud of. What were some of the bigger stories that you worked on? It's a 30-year career, so you don't have to chronicle all of them. But whatever comes to mind.
Well, honestly, I mean, one of the most difficult stories for me was the first attack on the World Trade Center.
Yeah. And
so I came in, and I think I came in after that attack, and I was having to kind of do the story on it. And that was difficult for me because I didn't really know that much and all the politics and all this sort of stuff. So those types of stories, TWA flight, Northridge earthquake in California, that was my first trip. And that was interesting. I don't know, 9/11. I mean, really, any story that comes, some of the biggest stories come through New York, but they're not the ones that really come to mind when I think of the stories that touch my heart.
Right.
It's really, for me, it's the stories of resilient families when a child is really, really sick, people helping people. The two, for me personally, that I care about because I was able to see how much it helped people was one that I did when I adopted my daughter in China. I brought a camera with me and I documented that. And this was, almost 20 years ago. It wasn't as prevalent as it is now. So a lot of people didn't know what the process was. And then one more recently on my mental health struggles. So because all the viewers, you get so many letters and so many people telling you what those stories meant to them and their lives, those are the ones that come to mind.
You've been obviously on camera for 3 decades at this point. Do you feel like there's a bigger responsibility having the anchor chair rather than having the reporter's mic?
You know what? I never thought about that. I really haven't. The thing I like about being an anchor and having a show that I have a lot of input into is to be able to do the stories that I want to do and I feel will make an impact. Right. Whereas when you're a reporter on a show, you are pitching your stories and maybe 1 out of 5 will be approved. And so a lot of the ideas you have will never be done. So that's what I really appreciate.
How long did it take you to get into the anchor's chair?
It didn't take long, and it wasn't because, she's good. It was because the morning show anchor, Lisa Rudolph, was on maternity leave. And so they said, maybe 2 months in, called me while I was out on a story and said, can you fill in anchor? And I was like, oh my gosh. But wow. Yes, I did. And I filled it with Maury Alter. I don't know if you remember him.
Oh my God, Maury Alter, get out of here.
Yes.
Not a legend.
He is a legend. And oh my gosh, what the best person to co-anchor with as your first, New York City show. He was the kindest and awesome reporter as well. So we had so much fun. Lisa did not come back, actually. So I kind of, from there on, was anchoring something all the time, usually reporting and anchoring different shows. I've done like gosh, pretty much every show.
That was in 1993 still?
Correct.
Oh my gosh. Wow. To hit the anchor chair
Yes.
that quick in your career is unbelievable.
I was lucky.
No, I mean, obviously you are immensely talented. There's no luck to it. I mean, maybe a little bit, but absolutely. But, obviously your talent is taken over and it shines through every day. So I guess my next question on top of that would be is that, you've had so many years on the anchor's chair at this point. Do you miss going back out in the field?
Oh, I do get to go out on the field. So,
right, but there's stories that you want to do out in the field, not that.
Correct.
Right, not hostage stories anymore, so to speak.
No, I do not miss the day of air stories where you get a story at 10 a.m. You have an hour to make calls and try to get it together for experts, and then you go out and shoot it and have it hopefully,
right,
in edit by 4:00. No, I do not miss that at all.
What are those qualities that make up a great host, a great journalist, a great reporter, doing incredible at your job? What are those things that you key on to bring your best every day?
Treat the viewer as somebody, your friend who is right there. So when I look at the camera, I see it as a person in a conversation versus I don't think about how many people are out there. And I don't know. I think I'm just very natural and real. And if I make a mistake, I make a mistake and I joke about it. Or, early on in my career, I really had trouble holding back any emotions. I used to just start crying. I would I'd do a story on a young person dying, and I would see the little coffin going in the video, and the tears would just come. So I've always been pretty straightforward and real. I think that's
I'm so glad.
thing.
I'm so glad you just talked about that, because I'd be a basket case up there, because I do think, you have the I don't want to call it stage fright, but you have a certain anxiety about being in front of a camera and delivering your performance well and telling your story well so that people understand it and care about it. But then, as you just said, you also have the emotion of maybe a dramatic story or something that's sad that you're bringing. I would have to be an open book because I wouldn't be able to hold it back. Do you never tried to hold it, or you always just laid it out there?
No, I think I tried to hold it back as I got older. Because the thing I think we all try to do is not make ourselves the story, which that's why it's also so strange to me that the two stories that I feel made the most impact were stories that is about something personal, which is always very scary to do.
So, Cindy, when you meet somebody for the first time, when you talk about tricks of the trade and making somebody comfortable when you're doing a story, are there certain approaches that you take with your reporting in that setting?
Definitely. I always try to, talk with them on a personal level before the interview starts. And just, if it's a sad story, just share how sad you are about what's happened to them. One of the hardest things I think any reporter will tell you is when there's been a horrible loss in a family and it's your job to go knock on the door and ask about that child who was just shot. And I remember Pat Battle, she's from Channel 4. She's one of my mentors. She was from Channel 2 when I first came. And she taught me this trick. She said she just writes a note, saying that I'm out here. I don't want to bother you, and slip it under the door. And that's how she handles it. So that's the trick of the trade as far as out in the field. And I'm trying to think as far as, this is kind of funny. I noticed since I've done this 9 a.m. show, which has a lot of live guests, I actually, and this is what I do normally, I always wear little bunny slippers all throughout the newsroom. And I only put on regular shoes when I'm actually on TV and my feet show. But when I go back to the green room before the show to meet the guests, I always keep my bunny slippers on because I want to make anybody like, oh my God, I can't be, nervous around her. She's got bunny slippers on. So, I do those kind of little things. I try to chat with them before and all that sort of thing. So making somebody feel really comfortable is important to me.
Yeah, you're really dealing with somebody in maybe the most vulnerable point in their lives. We interviewed a firefighter on one of our podcasts here, and you're really dealing with somebody who's maybe in a situation that they're only in once in their life. And I would think for you, bringing a story to life like that, that guest might be in the same position. And that's fascinating that you would have to reconcile all those emotions and make yourself more, I don't know, not vulnerable, but approachable to them.
Definitely. Always approachable. Because, I always keep in mind how difficult it is to talk to people on TV when it's not your job.
So I want to shift gears here a little bit, and you alluded to it before. You became a single mom in your 30s, a unique story, yes. Adopting a child from China, but also just becoming a mom in general. How did that affect your career, and what was that like? Did you have to make major adjustments? Was it easy? How did that work?
Well, I've always known I wanted to be a mom. I used to be that weirdo who would look at kids going into the playground and just watch them. So I always knew that was there. I thought that it would be you get married and then you have a child and all that. And, that wasn't happening for me. I wasn't meeting anybody that I wanted to, get married to. So as I was getting older, I was 37 when I finally adopted Rosie. And it was one of those, you got to do it now or never. So I decided to adopt from China. I can't remember, maybe it took a year and a half to do all the paperwork. And that was, all my friends are shocked because I'm the most, I don't know, I'm so discombobulated. I'm all over the place. So the fact that I could fill that paperwork out. So did that. And then what was helpful was I really included everyone in the newsroom in the whole process. So they knew what was happening. China, when they match you with a child, they just send you an email picture of the person, of the little one, and that's it,
wow.
Basically. So that day, and you never know when it's going to happen until they call you and say, hey, we're going to send you an email. And so we had our whole newsroom gather around the computer. And I said to myself, no matter what I think when this child pops up, I just have to look happy because this is, I got all these people here. So I pushed the button and, she was very strange looking. I always say she looked like a Michelin man with a black toupee on her head because what they do is they dress the little kids up with so many sweaters and they're usually on some sort of fun bicycle or something. So she looked really funny. But it was amazing to share that with my friends at work. And then I didn't change much in my life. I always had the idea she's just going to be incorporated into my life. I'm not going to change things for her life. And I really did that. I mean, I do a lot of charity events where I MC. I always brought her with me. And when she was little, she would come on stage and I'd put her up to the microphone and tell her to please try to quiet the people. Because if you have a kid do it, they're going to be quiet.
Of course.
And as far as, I've had most of my career, I've had to wake up at 3 a.m, sometimes double shifts on that shift. And so she would come to the newsroom and she would be with me throughout the day. It was on the weekend, so it wasn't bothering anybody. She'd go into the control room. She'd sleep on the couch. And she would even sleep on neighbors' couches sometimes when it was too much. Let's say there's a blizzard or a hurricane that I'm going to be gone for, a couple days. And she would stay at one of my friends' houses during that time. So she's really adaptable. It worked out really the way I thought I had hoped it would.
Did that experience make her want to be a reporter or not want to be a reporter?
Have you done the right thing and scared her away from this life?
She never wanted to be a reporter. She is she's so shy. She used to be really like to perform and everything and sing, and I was afraid she would want to be a singer or an actor. And the only reason I would not want her to do that is because she was really bad. And she would
do you want your daughter to listen to this podcast at all?
Oh, she knows. She knows all this. And I just thought, she finds so much joy in it, but oh my gosh, she's going to face so much rejection. So then her personality kind of changed and she got really kind of shy. And that's how she is now. She's in college, but she was here visiting. And my friends at the show, they're like, oh, why don't we put Rosie on and she can bring her, she has like this little service dog she's trying to help train. And then her roommate, let's put them on. And Rosie was like, no, I don't want to do that. So, and also, a lot of my career has been very, very stressful. So she has seen that. And I think from that alone, she would not want to go into this business.
Okay, you kind of opened the door to where I wanted to go next. You said that the job, we know the job is very, very stressful, can be extremely stressful. And you've been very open about your struggles sometimes with mental health. When did you first begin experiencing this notion of I'm having problems coping? Like when you actually were very open with yourself and said, I'm having problems coping with the stress, to the point where you said to yourself, I need help?
I never recognized I had problems with stress. I was just so used to it that you just kind of keep going and going and going. And the only way that I saw there was a problem, well, first of all, I'd go out on a very easy story, and I couldn't write very fast. My mind was very fogged over. So I was like, whoa, my mind is not working as it used to. And then I would be sent out on an easy story, and my heart would just start beating so hard that I thought I was having a heart attack or something. And I remember on my way to a story, when I felt like that, we had to go to the emergency room. My cameraman brought me to an emergency room. They didn't find anything. And then I just went back to work again. And it wasn't until my friend, who was also worked at the station, Nicole Tendelia, she came up to me one day and she said, are you okay? And she pulled me aside, and then I just said, I'm not. And I just started bawling. And I left work that day, and I didn't come back for 3 months.
What year was this?
This was in 2015.
What was walking away for 3 months like? And what did that mean to your career? Were you worried about it at that point? Well,
I was really worried about it. I was always worried about my career, especially being a single mom. It's not like I can rely on anybody. So the day that I left, what was good was Nicole had said, do you want to go, talk to the news director? And I said, okay. And then he said, you just have to get better and don't even think about this place. And, was really very different than he normally was. So I was like, wow. So I went home and I went to my internist, and I told him that I was having suicidal thoughts because things were just getting darker and darker. Depression, which I've learned now because I had no idea I was depressed. I'd never seen a therapist or anything. It just kind of builds on itself, and it gets worse and worse, and it makes you feel like you're a horrible person, you're a horrible mother, you're terrible at your job. So I started thinking about suicide, and I went to my internist and told him, and he was like, you can't, you're a mother, and immediately sent me to a psychiatrist. And I was seeing her, and that's another thing I just want to tell people. I'm a real believer in therapy, but you have to find the right person for you, because this particular person kept saying, okay, how fast can we get you back to work? Where that really, to me, was one of the main triggers of all of this. So even while I was seeing this person and on medication, everything was, going crazy at home. My daughter, I would come home and I would just go to sleep, and I was barely taking care of her. I finally told my mother, could you please come up and help me? She was in Virginia, so she came up, and but things just kept getting worse. And I attempted suicide. And then after that, went through the process of getting better. And that really is my message. I mean, no matter how bad it feels, there is hope, and somebody can help you, and there's a light at the tunnel, and you can feel yourself again.
I know that as an Asian, and you said you went to see a psychiatrist. My mother happens to be a retired psychologist, so I mean, I'm not going to say I understand where you're coming from, but I understand the need to seek professional help, and especially for for my Asians like yourself, like myself, there's a real stigma that comes along with that. The notion of, you kind of keep those emotions to yourself, and you don't let anyone else in. You try to stay private. Were you ever worried at any point about, being stigmatized in that sense?
I was worried about being stigmatized if I ever returned to work. I was really ashamed that I had tried to take my life, and I was embarrassed about the whole situation, depression and everything. So actually, after I attempted suicide, and then, the doctors keep you in a place to just physically bring you back, then you go to a step down place. No, then I went to a psychiatric hospital, actually. And then when I went after that for a few weeks, and then you go to a step down place where you can go home, but you're still being treated by psychologists and groups and things like that. And I mean, we were all so worried about going back to work and what would we tell the people, that we actually had workshops on, okay, how are we going to handle it? What are we going to say? How are we going to shut it down? Because none of us were going to go back and say, well, I was having, mental health issues, or this happened or that happened. So that was what I was worried about, was for my work people.
Your work people. So, I mean, there's two facets of that, right? It's the people you work with and sharing that with them, but you've been open enough to share with your audience as well. And I can't imagine the bravery and the decision making that it took for you to get to the point where you wanted to share that because you knew it might help other people. So if you could talk a little bit about that, I think that's amazing of you to be that open about your recovery.
Well, I was super nervous. It took me, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 25 years, 7 years to be able to talk about it publicly. In fact, I still didn't tell my best friends at work. My co-anchor didn't know. My office mate didn't know what had happened for all these years, because I shut it all down. I was just like, oh, I had a problem. I'm better now. But then when COVID hit, everyone was having issues. And I felt like, you know what, if there is a time to let people know that you can get better with work, now's the time. And that is why I did a half-hour special with Dana Tyler, who's a dear friend of mine. And we just sat down, and she didn't say, this is what I'm going to ask you. I didn't say, I don't want to talk about this. We just sat down and we had a conversation on a couch. And what was amazing was the station aired the whole 30 minutes. A normal story for a news station is 90 seconds. So I thought, okay, for this important issue, maybe we can get 4 minutes if they're going to be generous. But they were so supportive of what came out in this half-hour conversation that they aired the whole thing. And from then on, they've really supported mental health, and I'm so happy about that.
Did you feel that you're going through the process prior to COVID helped you deal with COVID maybe better than others?
Yes, I think so, because I think once you've gone through the process and you're well and you've learned your triggers, when you are going down the rabbit hole again, then you can just, stop things because okay, this is a bad sign. I need to do this more. So, yeah, I think it definitely did prepare me for COVID. And also, as far as news people, I think a lot of us were not as isolated because we still went to work. Sometimes we anchored out of our homes. Sometimes we reported with masks. So we weren't as shut away as many people were.
Do you still have triggers today?
Yes. I mean, I have times when I'm feeling really low, and I know when I'm feeling really low, that's not normal for me. And I need to write some stuff down. Journaling is very important to me. I need to make sure that I'm seeing my therapist on a regular basis and I'm keeping up with my medication. So yes, I think it's something that I'm likely going to be dealing with for the rest of my life. And that's okay, because it is just like any illness. It's just like any physical illness. You do what you need to do to keep yourself healthy.
You know, it's interesting having this conversation and thinking about the fact that you never know what's going on in somebody else's mind and in somebody else's heart. You know, you are clearly such a positive up person externally, as so many people are. You never know what people are dealing with, and it's sort of a nice reminder that you need to have empathy and patience and understanding with everyone, no matter what the circumstances are. You know, Cindy, pivoting away from this subject and going forward a little bit, you know, when you look at the industry and how it's changed in the time that you have been in it, what are some of the things that really catch your attention in terms of style, in terms of approach, from, you know, the young Cindy Hsu who entered the industry in 1993 versus how things are done today in 2023?
I think way back in 1993 when I came and all the legends were there, these were very seasoned reporters, you know, who'd been on the street for years and years and years. And, you know, sometimes they had very unique ways of telling their story. You know, there's only one way Pablo Guzman can tell a story. There's only one way Vic Miles can tell a story. And they do it in their own way. I don't really think it's like that. I think it's more cookie cutter now. You know, it's very much, okay, you only have 90 seconds to do it. Okay, you have to have this exact time. You need to put a stand-up in there. Also, our newsroom looks completely different. I love our newsroom, but I feel that newsrooms across the country are, you know, hiring people sometimes right out of college in a very large market. And that can be tough because if that person starts making the mistakes that you should be making in a small market,
Interesting.
That's going to be very difficult for them. So I always encourage people who want to go into this business, don't look at the large markets as that where you want to go right away, because you need to make your mistakes in a small market where they're not going to remember. You know, they're going to expect that from you. And then there's also the whole digital thing. That's, you know, right now, as far as TV, we're just all hoping people will continue to watch TV, and most of the young people are, you know, streaming. So that's a big change too.
Do you like the business still?
Well, I love the business right now just because I love my show.
Sure.
So I think a lot of it is, you know, honestly, a lot of it is what's happening to you at that moment. I think it's a tough business. You know, you can be treated well and at a certain time, but then you can see other people who are not having that experience, which I had for many years as well. So it's a tough business. You really have to want to do it if you're going to do it.
Okay, so then on that note, what is that one piece or two pieces of advice that you want to give to someone who wants to enter the business at this point and, you know, make a name for themselves?
I would say you need to learn all the jobs, because nowadays you are going to shoot your story, you're going to write your story, and you're probably going to edit your story. So learn all those skills because that's expected. And I'm always very impressed when young people come to the station just because they'd like to do this in the future. You have to be very aggressive. You need to find like somebody, let's say somebody you really admire their work, and watch them and then even reach out to them. They may not answer you, but hey, you go to the next person and you somehow make these conversations. I mean, these people, they will call a news director and they'll say, you know, I'm in town. Can I just see you for a few minutes? And they may say no, or they may bring you in and give you a tour of the station and you will be remembered. So it's get your foot in the door through an internship or the lowest of the low job, take it and never say no. And also, I know this is going to sound cheesy, but kindness counts. Don't burn bridges because people remember.
Actually, we always tell people that the one seemingly overriding theme with almost anyone that we've interviewed is, hey, we're not a jerk. People enjoyed working with us. So as long as you're not a jerk, you will get that next job.
Yeah.
And pay it forward, pay it forward, pay it forward.
Yes.
That's what it's all about. Well, Cindy, you know, thank you for paying it forward with us today and for coming on with us. You know, this has been such an enlightening conversation in a lot of different ways, and hopefully it's going to bring, you know, some real meaning to some folks who listen. So Cindy, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, because look at the work you're doing. You're sharing with people how to get places, and that there are no wrong choices. You can,
Yes.
overcome.
Yeah.
And so thank you for what you're doing.
Well, that was one of the most remarkable, real, and inspiring, and in many ways uplifting conversations that we've had on this program. Larry Shea, what are your takeaways?
Yeah, I think there's so much important stuff here that we need to cover. The importance of self-awareness. I mean, we talk every week about chasing our dreams, right? And these could be high stress situations. So the self-awareness that she had and just the feel your feelings, she knew she was hitting a wall and she hit the wall, and to step back and then be courageous enough to share that story with the rest of the world, I think is so important. But whatever we're pursuing, I mean, it could be anything. Right? In her case, it's journalism, right? But it could be an architect, or it could be a pilot. It could be anything you're pursuing in life to chase your dreams. Have that self-awareness. Take those moments of reflection, because what a valuable lesson she just gave us in the pursuit of her dreams. And what a remarkable woman. I'm just so proud of her journey and her courageousness for sharing all of that with us.
Her dream could have turned into a nightmare, and she didn't allow that to happen. And that's the most remarkable part of this interview that we just did with Cindy Hsu. Not to mention, she's doing this at the same time that she's got a young child with her as well, right? You've got to be able to hold it together, and understanding those moments, having that certain amount of self-awareness to say, I have to stop, I have to take a step back, and I have to regroup. And then knowing that, okay, at the end of the day, yes, maybe I'll get a few slings and arrows, but I understand that at the end of it all, I'll be better for it. And that is the real tale of Cindy Hsu here, that she came out the other side of the tunnel, and it was great. And that's all you can really say. It's an inspiring story. And once again, Shay, you hit it right on the number. You have to have a certain amount of self-awareness in this. You have to understand yourself to understand how you're going to move forward.
Absolutely. And going back to the beginning of her journey, it's really remarkable that this was a young woman who came to New York in the 90s. I think she said she was in her late 20s, going into the biggest market on earth, going into one of the greatest stations on earth with some of the most well-known people in the industry. And she found her way very quickly and carved out a 30-year career within this business, which is really hard to do if you're a man. It's even harder to do, I believe, if you're a woman. And she is just a remarkable personality. I'd made a comment going into this conversation that doing my research, seeing a lot of the work that she has done is just so uplifting and so interesting. It was fun for me to get to know Cindy a little bit better through this conversation.
And doing it on the biggest stage. I mean, in New York City. I mean, how remarkable is that? And I just also want to reflect on, as you said, her very beginnings. She knew she was a storyteller. She knew she wanted to pursue journalism, pursue something like this, right? And that takes a special person to find those interesting stories, share them with the world, and to do it on the biggest stage. And I just have the utmost respect for everything that she's done in her career, a remarkable career.
It's hard to be able to connect to people instantly, and that's what Cindy's able to do. You're right. As a storyteller, she does an unbelievable job. She's able to get the facts out, but I think the biggest asset that Cindy has is her ability to connect to people and understand them on a very human level. And that is really, I think, in many cases, what separates Cindy from so many others, her ability to connect.
That's exactly right. And I had a chance to meet Cindy before we did this interview and to spend some time with her. And you described that extremely well. We connected very quickly. It was very genuine. And to that point, she's even sent some other people our way for some future episodes. So she's taken a very genuine interest in what we're doing here, which is incredibly thoughtful. So with that, Cindy Hsu, thank you for making those referrals and also for joining this episode of No Wrong Choices. We also thank you for joining us. If this or another journey story inspired you to think of a friend who could be a great guest, please let us know by sending us a note via the contact page of NoWrongChoices.com. As I mentioned off the top, please support us by following No Wrong Choices on your favorite podcasting platform while giving us a 5-star rating. And then last but not least, we encourage you to join the No Wrong Choices community by connecting with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and X by searching for No Wrong Choices. On behalf of Tushar Saxena and Larry Shea, I'm Larry Samuels. Thank you again for joining us, and always remember, there are no wrong choices on the road to success. We learn from every experience.